Welcome to the CMO Spotlight, and I'm here with Akerho, or AK Oghoghomeh, who is the Senior Vice President of Global Marketing for Beyond Meat. Welcome, AK.
Thanks, man. It's good to be here.
Thanks for being here. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I know we were chatting about some Atlanta roots. You had some time
hmm
here in Atlanta, but you are now in the Los Angeles area, and I know. I'm very interested to just talk to you a little bit more about Beyond Meat, the organization. I know you're relatively new to the organization, but I wondered if we could just start by your telling us a little bit more about Beyond Meat.
Yeah, it's really tough to talk about Beyond Meat without talking about Ethan Brown, who's the CEO and founder of the company. And when you think about Ethan, first he's got this massive charismatic personality, and he's also got this vision and mission to change the way that people eat around the world. We know that one of the largest contributors to carbon in the atmosphere is actually the food industry.
Hmm,
So we think that by changing the way that people eat, we'll be able to impact the world in a positive place. Not just the environment, but also animal welfare, our own personal health as well will be impacted in a positive way. So when Beyond Meat is consumed by consumers all over the world, we know that you can actually fight climate change by eating burgers and steak tips and chicken fingers, things that we would normally love to eat. And our ambition is to actually create products that are so similar or better than their animal equivalent that consumers will choose Beyond Meat and other plant-based proteins instead of eating animal-based proteins.
awesome. Well, I know a lot of folks talk about wanting to work for a mission-led company, mission-focused company, but obviously this one has a large mission beyond just selling more stuff, it sounds like.
hmm Oh yeah, very much so. And it's actually what drew me to the company. For years, I've been working on brands and in businesses that were doing great things in the world, impacting culture and community. But I always wanted to work at a brand that had a higher driven mission, or rather had a larger mission and was a bit more purpose driven in terms of what it is that we were doing. And at Beyond Meat, you're able to do that as well as work in the CPG industry, which is phenomenal.
I love it. Okay, cool. So I'm curious about your role as SVP of Global Marketing. What does the team look like? What is your focus and kind of what is your purview there?
So it's a it's a good sized team. It's a global team. We have under my remit, we've got advertising. All of our media and creative is underneath me. We have our shopper marketing teams, our creative and design teams rather. We have our product innovation, and then we also have all of our global marketing teams. So we have teams based in China, in the EU, as well as in Canada right now. But I'm responsible for building out consumer driven plans that are aimed at driving consumer demand across the world.
Wow. So I know you've had an interesting career path. I think you went to undergrad at Drexel in Philadelphia and then
hmm
graduate school at Emory here in Atlanta. But then you started your career at ConAgra and then moved to Red Bull for that first stint there. So tell us
hmm
a little bit about your journey and your career path that led you to what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's a bit of a winding and twisting career path, but it all kind of makes sense at the end of the day. I started my career out coming out of undergrad actually as a chemical engineer. So I graduated from Drexel University with a BS in chemical engineering, and I went to work at DuPont. And while at DuPont, I had a fantastic experience as a true process engineer. But I also realized that there might be a little bit more for me out there. And I spoke to a mentor who encouraged me to get my MBA, which brought me to Emory University down in Atlanta. There, I focused on brand management and consumer marketing, had some fantastic classes, and I got a chance to work at ConAgra Foods as an intern. So I worked over in their M&A group, coincidentally, but also worked with their banquet brand, finding new ways to understand the competitive landscape that was impacting banquet and what banquet could potentially do to penetrate the category more. Um, so after the internship, I was able to earn a full-time role at ConAgra, and I moved into their brand leadership development program, which is a really cool opportunity for me to rotate through different centers of excellence within marketing, and then get onto a brand marketing team and really help drive strategy for that brand. So I started out in advertising, media, and creative. Then I moved over to shopper marketing. So I used to call on Kroger. That was my main account. and I worked across refrigerated and frozen and shelf-stable brands. And then I poured it off and I got onto one of the brand teams. I worked in the sweet snacks team um, on a brand called Snack Pack Pudding. So they used to call me the pudding guy back in the day. So it was a lot of fun. So after a couple of years of that, I really did enjoy it, but I missed the marketing. I missed working in advertising. I missed working in media. I missed like working with customers in a more intimate way, right? In retail marketing. And around that time, Red Bull reached out and they were really trying to bring a little bit more structure and strategy to the way that we worked regionally. So I was very interested in the brand and really interested in getting back into marketing. So I accepted a role as the first brand manager hired at the company back in 2012. So I was a regional brand manager over a specific territory within the country. It ended up being the South Business Unit, which was based in Atlanta, which is what brought me back to Atlanta after living in Chicago for a number of years with Conagra. So I did that for a number of years, starting out as an individual contributor, but then building kind of efficacy and building a better understanding what brand meant for Red Bull. So I ended up taking on more and more responsibilities. I took over the youth marketing organizations. I took over all of the advertising, all of the media, all of the customer and shopper marketing. And then much of the field marketing began to report under me as well. And then after about 6 years, I really had greater ownership over the marketing mix for at the BU level. And I was working closely with our global and national stakeholders to build out some incredible programs and projects. But you know, I started to get a little antsy. That I felt like there was a little bit more out there that I was missing. And after working at Red Bull for 6 years, I felt like there was marketing was moving more than I was moving with it, if that makes sense. Digital marketing became more and more important. Performance marketing became more and more important, and I wasn't really getting as much of that within my role. So I left Red Bull and I moved over to a B2B marketing company called Campaign Monitor, which sells marketing technology, email marketing software to be specific. And I was the VP of marketing over three of the brands, and also, but also the flagship brand Campaign Monitor. So in that job, my role was to see if I could attract new customers to start to use these software properties to engage their consumers, leveraging first party data. Really, really fascinating work. A lot of great stuff working in performance marketing, working in digital marketing, but I also got a chance to bring the brand back and really focus on brand marketing as well. So after a couple of years of doing that, we had some really great successes revitalizing those brands and businesses. And I got a chance to go work at Amazon. They reached out and said, "Hey, we're looking for a marketer who understands brand marketing, but also understands performance marketing."
Mm.
And here I was, someone who had been doing that for
Yeah.
basically the last 8.5 years of my career. So I moved over to Amazon, working in the recruitment marketing organization, where I was responsible for basically half of the country and finding ways to drive basically demand for Amazon's hourly opportunities within their fulfillment centers, sort centers, and
Mm.
AMZL locations. It was a field of marketing that I had never imagined myself being in.
Yeah. It's like
Very different to
recruiting
even
and
realize it
HR.
existed.
Right.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I was
Yeah.
working in HR, but as a marketer.
Yeah.
And in the little over a year that I worked there, I got a chance to drive marketing approaches and strategies that drove over 1.3 million people to work at Amazon in a 12-month time period. It was pretty phenomenal. Just kind of leading an organization and having that amount of output and outcome happen when the company was in crisis during a pandemic, where people couldn't go to grocery stores, they couldn't go to the mall and
Hmm.
pack and
Hmm.
find their things. So they were getting a lot of their products from e-commerce players like Amazon. And the growth that Amazon saw during that time would not have been possible without the effort from my team, as well as the effort um, from a lot of other individuals all over the country. So I was really proud of that work. And then after that, a mentor of mine called, his name is Ken Turner. He's a phenomenal marketer and leader. He reached out and said, "AK, we would really like to bring you back to Red Bull um, as my successor to be the new senior vice president of brand marketing." Um, so after being gone for a few years, it was really nice to come back to the brand. I had to transition my family from Nashville, Tennessee, all the way out to Los Angeles to lead this organization and be the new SVP. But at the same time, it was a phenomenal opportunity to take a brand that I love so much and people that I loved working with so much to newer and greater heights. So I was able to do that for a couple of years before deciding again that I kind of felt like there was a little bit more out there for me in terms of the world of marketing. And I wanted to branch out and expand the scope of influence that I had and the scope of responsibility that I had to take over marketing at a new company. So I decided to move on to Beyond Meat. Again, a beautiful company with a really important mission that's purpose driven, something that I'd always been looking forward to doing, and I was excited to really be able to take on right now.
So I have a curveball question for you, which is, were there some times in your career where you had to lean on that chemical engineering degree and you felt like that was a useful degree to have for marketing?
Honestly, all the time.
Hmm.
Um, what I tell people about engineering, um, yes, you will learn about thermodynamics, heat transfer, material dynamics, separation. You'll learn about all those technical, theoretical things. But what you really learn as an engineer is how to think. You learn how to see a problem and understand the myriad numbers of solutions that you might
Hmm.
find or leverage to overcome the issue that you're dealing with. And I think that's a beautiful thing to have as a marketer. The first question I ask any CEO or any leader that I'm, thinking about working with is, what problems are we trying to solve? Right? Because if you can understand the problems, you can understand what solutions you can bring to bear. So all of that comes from the engineering background. And I didn't mention this before, but I come from a family of scientists. My father was an electrical engineer. My mother's a microbiologist, right? So this is kind of inherent. The idea of the scientific method, approving or disproving hypotheses is all a part of the DNA that I was brought up in.
So then are they completely disappointed that you've chosen a marketing path, or do they feel like you fulfilled the dream of leveraging that scientific background for commercial success?
I'd like to believe that they're proud of what I've done. My father passed away when I was younger, but my mother's still around, and she tells me she's proud of me here and there. So that's enough to keep me feel bolstered through the tough times.
Fair, fair, fair. I once wanted to write an article about the nobility of marketing, and I was making the case that doctors and engineers and scientists and all of those are noble professions, but marketing is noble too. So I
Indeed,
believe that for sure.
indeed.
Um, I'm curious if there's a piece of advice that either you wish you'd gotten early in your career, or maybe you would give to somebody that's just starting out their marketing career.
Yeah, I would say that they should say yes more often,
Mm,
right? I would tell that to myself as well. When I think about my time at Conagra and at Red Bull, Campaign Monitor, even working at DuPont, and I even spent time at Johnson and Johnson, I said yes to a lot, but I wish I had said yes to even more. More
mm,
experiences kind of shapes you differently than when you say no. Um, and this whole idea of a career path that kind of stair steps its way up, for the entirety of a career is a farce. The truth of it is that by saying yes to more things, you might zigzag a bit. But as long as you realize that you're picking up new skill sets and competencies and you're building yourself to become a better human being, you'll become a better marketer as well. Because at the end of the day, whether it's B2B marketing, B2C marketing, direct to consumer marketing, you're speaking and working with humans. You're trying to influence behavior of humans.
mhm.
And the best way to do that is to be human yourself and have a myriad number of experiences. So say yes to dinners that you might not want to go to. Say yes to um, having conversations with people that don't look like you and don't think the way that you look. Say yes more often, and I think you'll be more successful.
I love that advice. So I believe everybody, I know that you're into superheroes generally, and I
Yeah,
believe that everybody has the superpower of some sort. So I'm curious what you've been told your superpower is.
that's a good question. I would say that probably I'm a connector, right?
Mm,
I like to believe that my superpower is connecting people together, people who might not otherwise meet or see each other, who might not otherwise see the connectivity between the things that they do. And I like bringing them together to find harmonious matching, right? So it's not necessarily a romantic thing, but at the same time, I do love learning about something that someone's dealing with, a challenge that they're trying to overcome, and knowing that there's someone that I've met at some point in my life that might be able to help in some way, and
mhm,
bringing them together to find some solution, or finding ways to actually enhance the work that someone's doing by saying, "Hey, this is an avenue that you haven't even explored. Speak to this person and see what happens." And I've been very fortunate that many of the things that I've done to help connect people together have been very fruitful for people, whether it's furthering people's careers or finding ways to build businesses. It's been a lot of fun.
Excellent. Well, you and I are very aligned in that superpower. That I would say that's my favorite thing, is also connecting people together and kind of connecting those dots. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I'm curious if there are certain values that either you want to demonstrate to your team, or maybe you would even demand in somebody that would work on your team.
Yeah. Um, so I literally just sat down with my team. I'm only a few weeks into my new role at Beyond Meat, and I shared with them my personal values. The first one is simplicity. I want to make sure that whatever I do, whatever process that I'm a part of, that I find ways to drive out complexity and
Mm,
find the simplest way possible to get something done. Remove administrative work whenever possible so that people can get to the actual work of building brands and building businesses. The next thing is really around accountability. I want to make sure that I own everything that I'm supposed to own, and but I hold other people accountable to own their things as well. I usually say it a bit differently, but I don't want to curse on you.
that's fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
at
yeah.
this, but at the same time, I really do believe that you need to own your stuff,
Yeah.
and I want to make sure that my teams understand that accountability cuts a couple of ways. You can hold yourself accountable, but you should also hold each other accountable to making sure that we work together, and that leads me to collaboration. I really do believe in collaboration and working together as a team. Oftentimes, when I enter a new business, I find that certain departments aren't talking to each other. There's animosity, there's conflict that's happening. Now, I believe in conflict. I think conflict can actually create some really incredible things, but you've got to be willing to work together. So for me, collaboration is critically important. And the last thing that I always talk about, this is the fourth thing, it's not really as easy to frame up as simplicity, accountability, or collaboration, but it's this idea of bumping the lamp. And a good friend of mine told me about this. It's a term or a phrase that's used at Disney. And I'm not sure if you've ever seen the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Long time ago. Yeah.
Long time ago, right?
Yeah.
Um, it was an incredibly influential movie in cinema because it was probably the purest blending of mixed media on the
Hmm.
screen that people have seen, right? You've got real live action people interacting with animated characters and vice
That and
versa.
that and Space Jam, but yes.
That and Space Jam, similar, similar.
Yeah.
Roger Rabbit was first though, and I think it might
Yeah.
have actually influenced Space Jam quite a bit. There was a scene where one of the characters is racing through an animated room, and this character bumps a table that has a lamp on it with a loose fitting shade. Now, in prior years, if an animator were to see this, the shade would kind of move like this, and the shadows would kind of go in this direction. Well, Joe, you and I know that if you walk through a room with a light on a table with a shaky shade, that shade is going to cast shadows all over the place. The light's going to flow all over the place. Well, the animators at Disney decided that they were going to do it the right way. They animated the scene so that the shadows flowed all over the room in a really unique and interesting way that was much more realistic. And it cost a lot of money to do it because they had to spend a lot of time and labor to make this happen. But the result was a movie that seemed seamless in terms of the interaction between real life characters and items, as well as cartoon characters and items. And it became known as bumping the lamp.
Hmm.
And I tell this to my team because I say, I want you to bump the lamp as well. Go the extra mile to make sure that we execute with excellence, right? Make sure that you're doing the best that you could possibly do for something. And I'll hold you accountable to that, and you hold me accountable. So
Hmm.
if I'm not doing something to 100 points, tell me that I need to bump the lamp
Hmm.
because you know that I will tell you the same thing, especially if it's something that's going to face the consumer or our colleagues internally.
Yeah, and I think inherent in what you just said is not just about excellence, but also attention to detail, right? And
Attention to detail,
putting in the
exactly.
work to make sure that you don't leave any, uncrossed T's, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah, excellent. All right. So you talked a little bit about matchmaking and connecting the dots, and here at Setup, we're marketing matchmakers, and that
Hmm.
usually means that we bring marketers together with resources and people to help them thrive. And in practice, it usually means we connect brands and marketing agencies together.
Hmm.
And so we're not really an agency, we're not a brand, we live in that space in between. And so I'm just always curious how either, now that you're at Beyond Meat or even at Red Bull or one of your previous stops, how do you generally work with agencies? How do you like to work with agencies?
I mean, I really like to work with agencies in a more collaborative fashion. Um, one of the things that I always want to make sure that I identify is the problem that we're trying to solve for. Whenever engaging any agency, I'm not somebody who likes to just send out a brief and just let it go, and then I get the result back in a few months
Mhm.
or a few weeks. I really like it to be collaborative because I feel like that's when the best work comes through. So working hand in hand with an agency, looking at the brief, answering questions to the team working on the brief as needed, to make sure that we get the best possible work. I also look at agencies, across the spectrum as, problem solvers for us, right? We need to reach our consumer. We've identified our consumer target as a flexitarian. That's someone that consumes
Mm.
animal protein as well as plant-based protein. And we're looking to help drive up consumption of plant-based protein, hopefully beyond meat, right? We know that we don't have all the answers and solutions in our four walls. So agencies are an extension of our company, particularly ones that we worked with in the past that have built relationships with us, but also new ones that might be looking at things differently than we're currently looking at them. Maybe engaging with consumers in ways that we don't even know are possible.
Mm.
So agencies for me are partners, but they're partners that I like to be collaborative with in really, really close ways.
Are there certain functions that you feel should be kept in-house most of the time because they're core to the business? And maybe there's certain other functions that you feel should be outsourced or brought in an outside perspective from an agency because you need that, external view of your world.
It depends upon the team and how the team's set
Mm.
up. I would say at Red Bull, one of the things that I really loved about that company was that every single year we had to do our planning process. And planning at Red Bull was really more about creativity, finding new ways to blow consumers' minds and create these holy crap moments for them, right?
Mhm.
Um, so by and large, most of what we did was really around in-housing creativity. So my teams would come together and we would talk about new ways to really engage consumers. And whenever we tried to work with outside agencies on, coming up with creative ideas, it was always really challenging because Red Bull's come up with so many ideas over 30 years that
Yeah.
many of the things that are recommended are things that are kind of low hanging fruit that
Yeah.
we've either already done or already considered, right? So in-housing creativity for Red Bull was really challenging. Now we could outsource the execution. We'd come up with really cool ideas. We'd identify a framework for how we'd want to execute those ideas, and we pull in partners to actually help us with the execution of those ideas.
Mhm.
So whether it's production partners, like experiential agencies, things of
Yeah.
that nature, we could work with, quite well. But if you're a company that has limited resources, right, limited people resources, limited dollar resources, and that is not Red Bull's issue. Red Bull's got plenty of money and people.
You're right. You paid
Um,
for a guy to jump from space down to the earth
that
in
we
a
did.
squirrel suit. I mean,
That
that
we
was
did.
not cheap.
No, not even a little bit. But I could see outsourcing creativity in places like that. I
Mhm.
could see working with outside vendors to actually build new ideas, build new ways to produce those ideas and bring them to market. What I like to make sure that we keep in-house though is strategy. Uh, we need to understand the consumer really, really, really well. We understand the consumer really, really well, and we're able to work backwards from that. We should be able to build a cohesive strategy. The pieces after that are really making sure that I set good objectives, but then we really have really great tactics that are created. Now, the tactics can come from the inside or the outside. For me, it's really just the strength of the idea and the quality with which we execute.
So, as marketers, we often are working with the non-marketing functions within an organization who don't
Mhm.
live and breathe marketing every day, don't always understand us so well. So, I'm curious how you demonstrate the value of marketing. You spent a portion of your career in performance marketing and a portion in brand marketing. So, and you kind of live in both worlds, I think now. I'm curious, how do you demonstrate the value to the non-marketing functions in the organization?
I think it starts with making sure that the other functions understand who it is that you're trying to reach. Um, these other functions, if they have a good understanding of the consumer, will understand the value of marketing so much better. I think the issue that I've had in the past when the consumer wasn't really well identified or articulated was that people just wanted to throw tactics out. Because to your point, um, everyone thinks that they're a marketer, right? Everybody does. I've been working in marketing nearly for 20 years now, right? And I will still sit down with someone who's 25 years old and fresh out of school, and they'll tell me what good marketing looks like. And it's like, sure, we can all have perspectives and opinions, but there are people that live, eat, and breathe this stuff every single day that are marketers. So what I try to make sure that I do is make sure that the consumer is very clearly understood. And then I use the consumer, our mission, our vision, and our purpose as filters for everything that comes through the door. As long as there is a strategic framework and an understanding of who it is that we're trying to reach, it's a lot easier for me to either promote ideas that we're looking to garner more resources for, or reject ideas that may come from the outside that aren't strategically sound. But it's
Mhm.
got to start with that consumer. It always does.
So, talk, speaking of good ideas, bad ideas, et cetera, I'm curious if there's a campaign or a program that you were a part of, either probably not at Beyond Meat, probably in a previous life, that taught you a great deal, either because it was a huge flop and you needed to learn some valuable lesson that you just needed, or maybe it was a huge success that maybe you'd like to emulate again in the future in some other form.
Yeah. When I think about huge successes, probably the biggest impact that I had was probably at Red Bull,
Mhm.
just because there's so many marketing activities that we did, from launching the Red Bull editions in 2013, which makes up roughly 40% of the total portfolio now,
Wow.
to marketing activations that engage millions of people, online and digitally, from a small experiential event that happened in a city like Atlanta. As a matter of fact, I'll use one of those as an example. Back in 2017, we did an event called Red Bull Culture Clash.
Mm.
And this is an event that really takes on a lot of likenesses from Jamaican sound clashes that happened back in Jamaica back in the 70s and early 80s, which were the predecessors and influencers of, cool DJ Cool Herc and hip hop, right? The foundations of hip hop came from Jamaican sound clash culture.
Mhm.
So Red Bull came up with this really cool event concept. Was not my idea, to take four different crews and have them compete with each other across different music genres, right? But it was a clash of cultures. So EDM and electronic versus Jamaican reggae style versus hip hop versus whatever. What was really cool about this activation was that it gave me the freedom to actually work with whoever I needed to work with to create the campaign. So I worked with a really great agency based in Atlanta, and they came up with a campaign idea to feature a local artist. And the local artist would basically come up with all the campaign creative. And this artist, his name is Fabian Williams, fantastic artist based in Atlanta. And he created this really cool blending of superheroes, because I love superheroes, and musicians and artists, and he turned them into superheroes with this really iconic imagery. Um, and he hand painted everything. The agency then went and scanned all this information, and then they created these beautiful pieces of artwork that we then used as the foundation for the campaigns. It was a massive out of home campaign. We did social media ads on social. We did a lot of digital ads as well. We were able to sell out the event very, very quickly because of the marketing campaign. But for me, what made it so special was linking what Red Bull wanted to do with the local community, working with Fabian, working with a local artist that was really talented, and putting his artwork on a massive spotlight, so that people who were as famous as Mike Will made it, and Ludacris was there, and they all
Mhm.
got a chance to see it and be impacted by it. Was really special to me. And the outcomes for that campaign were fantastic for the company as well. So it's really a beautiful marriage of community as well as culture, as well as some of the company needs as well.
Love it. That's cool. So, all right, I've got some quick hit questions that are just for fun. The first one is, I'm curious if there's a movie or a sports team or a book or a band or a quote that inspires you, and what is it about that thing that inspires you?
Oh yeah. Um, I would say that the quote that inspires me most is a quote from the Bible, Proverbs 27:17. Um, as iron sharpens iron, so does one person sharpen another.
Hmm.
Um, it is a quote that I use in so many different ways in my life, whether it's about the friendships that I build, the relationships that I build, the relationship that I have with my wife, or even the people that I work with in the corporate office. Um, you can only go so far alone.
Mm.
In order to actually go further and higher, you need to work with other people in a very collaborative way. And if you work with the right people, those people will make you better. They will sharpen you in the
Mm.
same way that iron sharpens iron. So for me, that's something that I live with and I think about often, because it's so applicable to what we do. Joe, even meeting you today, I know that you would sharpen me just
Mm.
because of the relationships that you have and the way that you approach the way that you work. And I try to identify and seek out those types of people, and engage with them as much as I possibly can.
I love it. That's great. Great quote and great philosophy of life as well.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, outside of your family, where do you find joy? Besides basketball, where do you find joy in life?
Um, I, I really do enjoy, I like watching movies. I like to be inspired by movies. Again, I'm a big superhero fan, so I watch anything that comes out from Marvel or DC from the superhero front. But I also like physical fitness. I love working out. I love running. I love working out in my little home gym. But then I also love coaching sports as well. So I coach both of my kids in soccer and basketball. And I like to take a leadership role. And it seems like I end up taking leadership roles in everything. But
You get
it,
recruited or you're volunteering, both
I,
or both.
sometimes it's a bit of both. I get
Yeah.
voluntold quite a bit from my wife
Yeah.
when no one else steps up. But
Yeah.
I do enjoy it. Makes you very happy.
Okay, so my last question for you is there a brand that you've never worked on that you really admire? And what is it about that brand that you admire so much?
Oh, that is a great question. I'd probably say it's like a very small apparel brand right now. It's one of those DTC brands. It's called Built, BYLT.
Hmm.
And they basically make basics for men and women, undershirts and things of that nature. The brand is so clear in what it is that they want to do. And their mission is just so tight in the way that they plan to do it and the way that they plan to impact people, that I really appreciate. It's so simplistic. Their marketing is very simple as well. That could be due to resources, but at the same time, it's very clear to me. They know who they're going after from a consumer perspective because I see their ads all over the place, as
Hmm.
do my friends. And one of the highest forms of flattery I can probably give them is that I went to the Super Bowl with a few buddies of mine. We're all really big Philadelphia Eagles fans. Um, and all of us were wearing the same shirt.
And it was all
uh,
built. It was all
it was
built
all
up.
Built.
They were,
Yeah, so they did a really good job of targeting,
wow.
this 35 plus consumer. Being generous there with that, um, with their stuff, and it's if like I said before, if you understand your consumer, the strategy, the tactics will all follow really well.
Well, let's give them a plug. Where can one check out Built or buy Built? Is it available at regular retailers or is it
No, it's
you said
just
direct to consumer,
DTC.
right?
Yeah, it's all DTC. So builtbasics.com would be where
Built
you'd go.
Basics.
Yeah.
BYLTbasics.com. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, AK, this has been such a joy to have this conversation. So, Akerho Oghoghomeh, who's also known as AK, is the Senior Vice President of Global Marketing for Beyond Meat. And thank you so much, AK. This has been such a joy.
Joe, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.